Okay, we are in the weekly Torah portion. Please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, hit the bell for notifications, and that way you'll always know when a new class is being given. And let's bring this count up to 1,000 customers watching this and watching the thing all the way. If you watch it all the way through, you get to hear the very last words I say. Isn't that worth the reward? If you ever watch videos, they always say you have to watch to the end. Okay, now here we go. We are in Portion-Tazria on page 608. Portion-Tazria, he says in the laws, if you go through the introduction, it says, after the laws of Tumah is spiritual impurity. It does not mean unclean, which is how normally, if you go back to an old Bible, it would say she was unclean. Or it's not uncleanliness. It has nothing to do with dirt. It has to do with the spiritual impurity. And by the way, how does one go from being tahor to tameh, from being spiritually pure to spiritually impure, if there's a change in status? Okay, so that would be an example. When I'm changing a status, if I go from, I become a Nazirite, I take the Nazirite vow, okay, and then I finish the Nazirite vow, well, part of that is I'm coming down from a status, so I have to bring all these korbanos because I've allowed myself to become tameh of a sort, okay? The woman, again, is a status. She's going to be a birth giver to somebody who gave birth already. So she is going to move down from a status. I involve myself with the mitzvah of a dead person, okay? I have the mitzvah to bury somebody. So what happens is, I was tahor, but by getting involved with the mitzvah of burying the person, I become tameh. I become spiritually impure. So again, it's a change of status that's going to make me go through this, going from spiritual purity to spiritual impurity, which is really the answer that you would have to give to your atheist friends.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, so it says, after the laws of Tumah that result from dead animals, the Torah returns to Tumah that emanates from human beings. The first subject to be discussed is that of a woman who gives birth, because that is the beginning of life, and therefore the start of the Tumah process. In other words, that which is, again, spiritually impure. She says the creation of human life is the most sublime phenomenon in the universe. By bringing it into being, man and woman become partners with Hashem, who gives a soul to their offspring. But this new life begins with Tumah, spiritual impurity, to show people that the mere fact of life is not enough. Life must be a tool for the service of Hashem, otherwise it is nothing. So after this, which is why you're going to get a Brit Milah, and why you're doing everything from the beginning. Okay, it doesn't mean that the child, by the way, let's understand something, because I know that the Christians watching this will always say, oh, see, there is sin here. There's no sin. Sin is not sin and spiritual impurity are two different things. Okay, spiritual impurity is spiritual impurity. Sin is transgression. A child is born clean of sin. Unlike Christianity who believes that a child is born with sin, or that man is born with sin, and that's why you need to be baptized, blah, blah, blah. We don't throw a kid through the mikveh. The kid is pure. Okay, it's a pure soul. So, but again, but we're looking at what is Tumah, is moving from spiritual impurity, which would be the mundane, if you will, to the holy. Okay? After this period of contamination, the new mother begins her cleansing process, culminating by the bringing of an offering. Before she brings it, she cleanses herself of the contamination, but she may still not consume sacrificial meat or teruma, because the mere absence of contamination is not yet the fulfillment of man's goal. Human aspirations must rise higher than the elimination of the negative. It must strive for the positive achievement. One is not completely cleansed until one has come to the resting place of Hashem's presence with an offering, and that represents atonement for the past and dedication for the future. Nowadays, it is customary that as soon as a new mother feels well enough to leave home, she goes to the synagogue and hears Kedusha, which or a similar part of the service. Kedusha is, again, holiness. Those when we say holy, holy, holy to Hashem. So it also is customary that after the 40 or 80 days, when she should bring her offering, if the temple would be here, that her husband is called to the Torah as a symbolic representation of the offerings described in this chapter. So the offerings and rituals symbolize that birth inaugurates the beginning of the ongoing privilege of raising a newborn child to a life of dedication and holiness that will enable Hashem to say to the child and his parents, you fulfill the purpose of the entire work of creation. So again, birth, giving life is not the end-all and be-all. It's bringing the child up properly and to follow the Torah. We all start out as spiritually impure because what you've done is you came from that medium, and now we have to become spiritually pure. How do you do that? Again, that's a life endeavor. Okay, that's what he's bringing up. It's all ways to get us to think about what we should be doing. It's not good enough just to be born. It's not good enough just to die. We actually have to live as Bnei Yisrael or Bnei Noach, whatever the case is going to be. Okay, we have to do God's work. So now, let's get into the actual story. There's the laws here. So Hashem said to Moshe, saying, Dabir Bnei Yisrael, speak to Bnei Yisrael, Lemor, saying to Bnei Yisrael, saying to the children of Israel. Now remember, this book of Leviticus is summoning who, normally?
The Levites.
The Levites and the Kohanim. So why are we getting involved in Bnei Yisrael? What do they have to do with this, okay? But because these laws have to do with everybody. It's not just the Kohanim. So it says, Dabir Bnei Yisrael, Lemor, so speak to the children of Israel, saying, Isha, a woman, ki Tazria, when she will conceive. And the word Tazria comes from the word Zera, seed. She is causing the seed to grow, okay? There's Tazria. So you're going to see something.
The seed, or how would you say it otherwise?
Oh, when you say it, when she conceives. Yeah. When she causes seed to...
I mean from the root word, seed. I'm just trying to get,
you're causing the seed to become something. Okay. So the seed goes into her womb and it impregnates her. V'yel de Zachar, and she gives birth to a male. The Tam'a Shivat Yamim. She would be impure, spiritually impure, for 7 days. K'mei, just like Nidat Devota Titma, just like the separation, the days of separation of, he says, of infirmity, she be Tamei, Tameya. So Rashi brings down, it says, Isha Kitazriya, when a woman gives birth, will conceive, sorry. So Amar Rav Simlai, said, Kishem, Sheisirato Shal Adam Acher Kol Behema, just as we learned about the creation of man after that of all the animals and the birds and the act of creation. Kach Taraton it Parsha Acher Torah Behema Chayva Of. So also the Torah now is putting man last. In other words, if you think about the last parsha we learned, so that was dealing with the animals, right? We got the kosher laws and so on and so forth. Yeah. So now we finished with that in the order of that creation. So now we go to the final creation. Fine. And it says, when she conceives, and that's to include even if the child, in other words, what do you call it, miscarriage. Even if there was a miscarriage here, or shenimcha v'nasa ke'en zera, later, once she has this miscarriage because something happened, so still she is tameya, as long as it was, we knew that she was, as long as she was pregnant, something like that, because the blood is coming from the area, so she's like I said, so she becomes tame from that. K'mei nidat devota tidva, and why? It goes like the when she's in nida. Say they call tuma amor benida magufa, just like when we talk about. I'm sorry, Hagdesh tuma amor benida mitmea tuma leda. Just like the laws of nida spiritually contaminate her, so also the laws of when she gives birth. So what does that mean? That just as we're not supposed to be with our wives. We're not supposed to touch them and so on and so forth during that time. So also here. And why don't we touch a woman during her menstrual cycle? A married woman. We're talking about...
Is something with transferring the tumor or something?
That certainly would be true. But the reason that we can't, in other words, you can't kiss your wife at that point. You can't hold her hand. Yeah. You can't... she can't hand something to you. Yeah. All these laws, what we call the hachakot, the distancing yourself. You can only talk to your wife at that point. Why? Because what you want to do is remind yourself that you didn't just get married to the girl to have children. Do you have a relationship going on here? So what that does is you go back to the time the time that you were dating. When you were dating, you didn't touch. You only talked. You didn't go to the movies. You didn't do those things. You were with your wife and your fiance at that point, whatever, the person you're going with, so whatever you want to call that, and you were learning about each other. When you can touch, you don't learn about each other. You rely upon that touching. And that's why there was an old, I think I read this in a book somewhere, that it was a boyfriend and girlfriend. So the boyfriend said, "Wow, I have a great girlfriend. She is so great. She understands me. We watched the game for 6 hours and she didn't open her mouth. It was so great. She was fantastic." And the girl said to her girlfriends, I don't think he likes me because we sat for 6 hours. He wouldn't open his mouth." So he thought it was great. She was like, "What are you doing here? I don't get this." Okay, but again, if I'm just going to sit, it's not enough to be in the room together. It's not enough to be holding hands. I have to have that discussion. I have to have that communication. Nida forces that. So here, she just gave birth. Yeah, you're the man. You didn't go through all that pain that she did. So you want to hold her hand. She's like, "Go away from me. I don't need this right now." And so the Torah forces that separation. To say, leave her alone, let her recover. She has to recover because she just went through an adverse experience. And then on top of that, you just have to show her compassion. You have to help her out. You have to do these things. But you have to go back to it like you were dating. Okay, and that's, again, every month. And then we have to do that. But certainly when the woman is just giving birth, also. Now it says, what the rabbis also point out here is, Isha Tazria, I don't know where it says it here. I'm looking to say it here. No, I don't think that's it. Okay, it says if she gives seed first, it'll be a male. Vayal, in other words, Kitazria, when she sends forth the seed first, then it will be a male, otherwise it will be a female. Okay, which is, I once asked a doctor about that. And the doctor said, "Yeah, no, it's just the way it is." So that was from doctor who said that. It was a religious doctor who said that. I was very surprised that he was saying no. Research doesn't show that. Now, of course, it's because we're understanding the words the way we want to understand it. That if the woman gives seed, we don't know what they really. I can't really say as to what the Talmud was really talking about, but it would seem that if she would, as it were, be satisfied first, then it would be a male, and otherwise not. Okay, so I'm not sure how that really pans out. Okay, and he brings down in number 2, he says, as during the days of her separation, upon giving birth, the woman becomes tameh with the same regulations, like I said, of the nida. She remains separate from her marital relations and may not touch anything that must remain in the state of ritual purity, such as the flesh of offerings. Ramban explains devota, her infirmity referring to the discomfort commonly felt at the outset of the condition. Okay. However you want to look at that, she is in need. Now, in those days, by the way, we were concerned about tameh and tahara, of things becoming spiritually pure and things becoming spiritually impure. There was a major difference. Certainly if I'm with sacrifices, if I'm dealing with all that, I have to be in certain states. So that's why she would have to stay away from bringing the korban right away. Because you would think, I know one woman, I remember she gave birth, it's like the story of the women in the rice paddies, the Chinese, where they give birth to the baby and they go back to work in the rice fields. Wow. Okay, I know one woman who was, I know where it was, but forget what the name place. And she had a baby, and she came in with a papoose, they call it, I think.
The baby. The American Indians did that, right? They carried the babies, and what do they call it?
That day she gave birth, she was in the place. And we looked at her and said, "What is going on? How are you back?" Wow. She said, "Well, I gave birth that day. Wow. And she was walking around, and nothing happened." I was like, "Wow, yeah, you're the queen." It's no question, you're the queen. But you would think that she's not going to feel great. She's not going to come out. Leave me alone. That's That's why they give you a day in the hospital even.
I was telling a story probably the last year or two ago when our kids were born. It was 5 days. The insurance company would let you stay 5 days. That doesn't happen anymore.
No,
I'm thinking also what you're talking about here may relate to today, what is called the postpartum blues, right? Where
that's true.
It was very down because now she's not getting all the attention she was getting when she was pregnant. She was in the hospital and whatever it was.
I don't know if they really have a reason for postpartum.
Yeah.
Postpartum depression. I don't think they have a real reason. It's a real problem with people, but I don't know if they have a reason for it. But I think we like to give a reason. But
maybe this, like you were saying, that maybe this woman going back to work immediately, that would kind of block and override that possible. She's getting back involved again.
Like I said, I'm not sure why she did it, and we all thought she was nuts. But but again, people do crazy things. But like I said, as far as postpartum, I don't know. It could be. Yeah. It could be that again. What you always have to remember, and I don't really want to get stuck on it, but we will. But it's God is writing this down. We are looking at it and using our 2019 common sense and saying what is really going on. No matter how many rabbis I have talking about what's going on, and the tradition is what the tradition is, but we're still looking at it through our eyes. And we're trying to figure out, okay, so this is what Torah is trying to say. This is the reason. That's the reason. Bottom line is because God said so. And God said that the woman is considered Tameah. And with a male, she's going to be Tameah for 7 days, just like the Nida. And then it goes further. Of a Yom Ashmini, because it's a boy. On the 8th day, Yemol Basara Alato. The flesh of the uncircumcised flesh shall be circumcised. Fine. That's, by the way, this is where the commandment for circumcision is, not the story of Avraham, not the story that we know of Avraham. That's the beginning of circumcision. That's why that would be the foundation of our circumcision. That would be explain the sign of the circumcision, but that's not why we circumcise our children. The reason we circumcise our children is because of this verse. V'yom Ashmini Yimol Basar Arlato. That's why, because anything after Sinai is what we have to pay attention to, not that which was commanded before Sinai. That's what the rabbis explained. So this is where, if somebody asks you where the mitzvah of circumcision comes from, the answer is right here in Portion-Tazria. The source of that comes from Genesis in Vayera. No, Lechacha. Yeah. The end of Lechacha. What?
Aside from the commandment of Adam against eating the tree, and later to Chava as well, is there any actual commandment spoken out
in the Torah?
In before Sinai?
Well, you have 3.
Right.
Circumcision.
Like God said, you will do this.
Yeah. Circumcision, Peruvu, be fruitful and multiply, and you shouldn't eat the sciatica nerve, Gidanasha. Those were all said beforehand. But once again, we're not it's not our command because of those stories. It's rather a later development. And the Torah was going to say the same thing after the giving of Sinai.
If they hadn't said it when we got it in Sinai, then it would have been retroactively removed, I guess.
Would have been retroactively removed?
Or no, it's like you did it before, but now you're not doing it anymore. It's like,
well, I guess, it would be overruled, right? If God didn't repeat it.
You didn't do it before, but now you can. So it's like,
correct. If God didn't repeat it after Sinai, so then it would not be a commandment that we have to follow. But again, those stories explain why we're doing what we're doing. That's all I'm saying. That's one explanation I saw. Okay. And then again, that's only for the first level of Tumah. So now it says, Ushloshim Yom Shloshit Yamim. Now for 33 days, additional days, Teishev Demei Tahara, she will sit in what we call clean blood. She should remain in blood of purity. But in all that time, in other words, there's no longer blood that is Tameya. So it's interesting. She's still flowing, as it were. is still seeing blood, but is no longer dam nida that is considered contaminant to the husband. Okay, again, spiritual contaminant. But still in all, she can't touch kodesh, anything holy, like the things that would be for sacrifice or something. She can't come to the base of mikdash until the end of her days of this purity. Okay, so Rashi explains even though she would see blood during this time, she's not considered tamea. No, and by the way, today, if a woman sees blood, even outside of her menstrual cycle, she spots, what we call spotting. Then, depending on how big the spot is, would determine whether or not she'd be considered forbidden to her husband. There's some certain things you're not. Some you are, some you're not.
What, is that at the beginning or the end? Or both?
I'm talking about after she went to the mikveh.
Huh?
Talking about after she went to the mikveh. She went to the mikveh on Monday. And then,
Gets another spot.
Wednesday she sees a spot.
Ah.
So she's spot. So how, depending on the size of the spot, what's there, and so on and so forth, will, again, all these things are halachic, will determine whether or not she has to separate from the husband, whether or not she has to bring a korban, and so on and so forth. So it's not, again, it's not a guarantee. That's why the Torah says, sometimes you see blood. By the way, if you see, I'll give you another time, let's say the woman was wounded, and so it looked like the blood was, that's why I say you have to be very careful when you start doing all these rulings. But if there's a reason that the blood may come from that area, but not necessarily from that part of the woman, the womb, the opening, so then she's not tamei. She's not to her husband or anybody else. So she wounded herself, she scratched herself. Yeah. You're not going to, even though you see blood, okay, it doesn't. And then you had the days of when there were lice around. Oh. People, if you go to, sometimes you roll over and you squash the lice, that creates blood. So now, was that her blood? Was that the brother? Is it the time that she should be bleeding or not? Yeah. So we have to figure out what's going on there. But all these things, you're looking at blood. Blood is blood. So I have to figure all these things out. Okay? And then it says you shouldn't touch anything holy, which would be like they said, the truma, the fishazu tevulat yama aruch. Okay, that's the bottom line. And she shouldn't touch anything. So he says here, after the end of the first 7 days, she immerses herself to remove the need of contamination. So again, she could be bleeding, she may not be bleeding. After 7 days of giving birth, she immerses. We don't do this at all today. Okay, we absolutely don't do this. But from the Torah, she would immerse after the 7 days, followed by which she assumes a new status for the next 33 days. Thus, there is a 40-day period, the 7 days following the birth, and the next 33 days when she is now at least partial state of contamination is explained below. She should remain a blood of purity during this period. She does not incur the tumah of nida, even if she experiences a menstrual flow. It has become the universal custom, however, that a woman experiencing a flow during these days is regarded as a nida. And again, that's today how we rule. But the Torah wasn't saying that. And then he said she shouldn't touch anything holy. So although her nida contamination has been removed, she may not touch truma or sacrificial meat for a full 33-day period. But she is allowed to touch ma'aser sheni, second tithe. Okay. That was a man. Let's go a little further. Now let's say she gave birth to a woman. Okay, so what happens? Now it's double. So now she's spiritually impure for 2 weeks, like a nida. That's double what a man. Why? What's the difference? This is where your atheist must go crazy. Why the difference between a man and a woman? A man is 7 days, a woman is 2 days. 2 weeks. Why? And then again, in 66 days. So it's double the time. So, by the way, if you go to your doctor today, they'll tell you how many weeks should you separate? You should not re-engage in marital relations.
Oh, after giving birth?
Yeah. 6 weeks.
Oh.
6 weeks.
Oh.
And because they're looking at the woman's healing process.
Yeah.
They're saying, and in 6 weeks she'll be back to normal, and that's what you do. You hold off. This is secular. I remember when my wife, when I went to the birthing classes, whatever they call those things, the mas, whatever they were, the first baby, they convince you that you should go to these lessons. The second and third, have a good day. Okay, but the first time you have to go and you have to watch all the videos. You have to watch all these things, and they're trying to trying to explain to you things. So I was a good boy. I went to all these things, fine. And I remember that she said, "Okay, 6 weeks you have to separate." I was thinking, "Wow, they're more stringent than the Torah."
Oh.
It's unbelievable. But okay, and she's giving this whole thing. She even gave a heter, she gave a leniency not to wash dishes. She said, "You're both being exhausted, so you let the dishes sit there." I'm saying, what kind of mishigas is that? You're going to let the dishes sit for 6 weeks? That's crazy. Leave me alone. But that was, I remember listening to all that, but that was one thing that was very strange to me, that they would say 6 weeks, because the woman has to recover.
Wow.
Okay? And so, you know, they were trying to encourage women, don't do it because your husband is whatever. So, but also you're seeing that in the Torah. So now he says, and he brings down, she shall be connected for 2 weeks. So Rav Hoffman suggests that the 2-week period should have applied to the birth of a son also. However, the Torah removed the contamination from the mother of the boy after only 7 days, so she would be purified before the Brit Milah celebration of her son. So there you go. So the Torah is being nice to her and says, really, you should be for 2 weeks. But you want to go to the Brit Milah, and to go to the circumcision, which is going to be held somewhere, so we're going to let you go to the mikvah, and it's a heter for you. So it's an interesting concept, right?
Yeah.
That's how Hoffman understood that.
Should be 2 weeks. The Torah is actually giving a heter.
Right, it should be 2 weeks. And so that's number one. The Ramban Nachmanides brings down an interesting reason. I think he said the doctor of his days gave this reason that when a woman gives birth to a girl, for some reason the blood is colder.
Wow.
It's colder. That's what the medical society in those days said.
Oh.
Okay, that's interesting. He brought down that opinion to where then which he then throws out and says the rabbi said it's not true. That it's just the way it is. You know, there's no difference between a man. And then they want to say that the gestation period was different from a male to a female. Again, the rabbi said no, it was 40 days. So there was a fight between the Torah or the rabbis, the tradition, versus medical science of those days. And he was bringing that down. So I thought it was interesting that he brought those opinions down. Yeah. Nonetheless, what you're seeing there is science will always try to say one thing, Torah will, the tradition will say something else, and who knows who's right. I mean, we know basically that it's what's going on, that it is only 40 days. But nonetheless, that for whatever reason Hashem had, he distinguished between two. Now, if you follow Hoffman, really she should be in 66 days altogether. 6 and 7 is 42, right? So 6 weeks. So she should really be for 6 weeks tied up anyway. So the medical profession today would be very much in line with giving birth to a woman for everybody, right? Following the most stringent opinion. And not worrying about whether or not the woman's going to be at the bris, because let's face it, we don't worry about this anyway, because we're not worrying about spiritual impurity of her touching truma or anything else. When Mashiach comes, we have to worry about that. But right now, we don't have that. Okay? So the fact that the woman wants to go to the bris, and most mothers do go to the Brit Milah, and so nobody says boo. Okay. So now after that, fine. So Melot, now what happens? Melot, you may tahara lebein lebat. So after she completes the days of tahara, for either the son of the daughter Tavi, Kev is Banshantol Yola, she has to bring a lamb. How does he call it? A lamb, a sheep. A sheep. Okay. A sheep that is 1 year old for an ola. Uben yona otor lechatat. And a pigeon. No, a young dove. A young dove or a pigeon. Yeah. Turtle dove, he says. For a chatat, a sin offering. El petach moed el kohen, to the opening of the tent of meeting for the kohen. Why is she bringing a sin offering? Anybody know? Remember? Come on in. Why is she bringing a sin offering? She gave birth. What's the sin? How did she sin? What?
The only thing I can think of is like when Adam and Chava, God said that birth will be painful for you now.
Right.
Maybe that's related to that. That's all I have.
Oh, okay. But continue that. So if birth is painful, go on with that.
So now you also have to give a
No, but what would happen if you? What happens when something's painful to you? What do you do?
you make an oath.
There you go. Okay. So what happens is it says that when she was pregnant, when she was giving birth, she said, he says, the elevation offering atones for resentful thoughts she may have had against her husband or even her creator during her labor pains. That's even Ezra. The sin offering atones for the possibility that in her agony she may have sworn never to live with her husband again. I don't want to have this pain. This is ridiculous. What are you doing to me? So as a result, she makes a shavua, and she makes an oath. Now, the problem with the oath is the oath has no standing. Why?
Because she's under duress, yeah?
Well, that's one thing. But she also is making a shavua, an oath against an already established contract. In other words, when you get married, you get exclusive sexual rights. Okay, part of marriage is sex. Let's face it. Okay, it's not a give in; it's part of sex. It's part of marriage. So if the woman wants to suddenly change the conditions of the contract unilaterally, she cannot do it. So, and when you're making a shavua, when you make an oath, you use God's name. So you made a false oath, or you swore an oath in vain. So that's a sin. So in all those cases, she would have to bring a chatat. Okay, and that's why that's one thing. Or again, she could have done a lot of things, but really that's a chatat. The other reason you could say to bring a chatat, by the way, is of course you went from being on the level of God, Creator, and you allowed yourself, if you will, to come down to the normal level. Remember, when she has a baby inside her, she is playing God, literally. She's creator. She's feeding the baby. She's doing everything with it internally. And she has this connection, this unbelievable connection women say they have with the ineffable. And suddenly she removes that. Well, of course she's going to be tameh. Because she went, again, what was tameh? You're going from one level to another. You're dropping down. And even though she's coming normal again, if you will, normal, she still dropped from creator to the other one. And now, this is one of my famous things. What would be the difference between a man and a woman in that? Why would there be a difference in time? Because when a woman gives birth to a man, okay, so a man is only partial in this thing of creation. But the woman is the one who's the incubator.
Oh, that's, yeah.
So now when the woman gives birth to a woman, she was so high in the spiritual realm. Again, creator giving birth to a creator. Yeah. So then it takes her twice as long, is that what they said?
Yeah.
Twice as long to become back to normal. So that's why it takes so long. They said that? That's one of my, I thought that was one of mine. Okay.
Yeah. I think it was Jonathan Sachs that I read it.
Okay.
That article. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't give me credit. I said that years ago. I came up with that years ago. I'm surprised nobody gave me credit. Say it again?
It was a farmer chief.
Okay, he should have said. I heard it from I heard from Rabbi Neville on YouTube. You know, I said that so many years ago, but I held that to be true. That because you're that level you're giving, and that explains everything. When you put into that context, it explains everything, and it makes it seem logical. Okay, so Vikrivo, right? So Vikrivo lifnei Hashem v'chiper leh. So he will bring it to Kohen, will bring it before Hashem, and it will atone for her. Okay, and she will be cleansed from the source of her blood. V'zot Torah hayoledet. This is the law of the yoledet, the one who gives birth, lazachar or lanakeva, to a male child or a female child. Let's say she can't afford to bring the sheep. So so she can bring the two turtle doves, or shnei bnei yona, or the again young doves. So then she can bring two different cheaper offerings. She can bring the bird offerings, one for the ola offering, one the totally burnt offering, one for the sin offering, and that will atone for her too. Fine. So it doesn't have to be the animal sacrifice. It could even be. It doesn't be. An animal. It could be a bird sacrifice. Bird sacrifice were much cheaper in those days. Okay. So that ends off the what do you call it? The birthing. Okay. Now we go into tsaras. So it says, what is tsaras? Again here in 13. He says, for hundreds of years, the popular translation of tsaras has been leprosy. Okay? And it was commonly accepted that prevention of the disease's spread was the reason for the quarantine of the suspected victim of tsaras and the exclusion from the camp of the confirmed mitzora, which is the person smitten with the malady. Rabbi Hirsch, I said this, I'll say it every year because it's so much worth repeating. Rabbi Hirsch demonstrates at length and conclusively that both of these notions are completely erroneous. Very briefly, and I invite anybody to go to Rabbi Hirsch to see the commentary. He really does rip it apart. Very briefly, he shows that the symptoms of tsaras, as outlined in this parsha, in this section, are far different from those of leprosy. Furthermore, if the reason for the mitzora's confinement is to prevent contagion, then some of the laws would be ludicrous. For example, if the malady covers the victim's entire body, he is not tameh. But if his skin begins to heal, he becomes tameh. Okay, again, his body is, the malady is covering the entire body, he's not tameh. He's totally covered with this disease. Everybody says, okay, you can go out to the world now. What? What kind of nonsense is that? When you have measles, you stay at home. You don't go out. Well, today I guess people go to school and infect everybody else. Okay, and try to see does your immune system, what is it called? The immunity that we gave, the shots. What is it called?
Immunization.
Immunizations. We want to make sure the immunizations are really working, so they send the kids with measles to school. Or they have a cold and they want to make sure that everybody can get the cold too. That's why we used to say about schools is germ warfare, biological warfare. That's what all the schools are. Okay, but he's saying if the entire body is not tameh, but if his skin begins to heal, he becomes tameh. It doesn't make sense, and then he's going to be put away. In the case of a house that is afflicted, the Torah prescribes that before the house is pronounced tameh, all its contents should be removed because they would become contaminated if they were left inside at the time of pronouncement. But if there was a danger of contagion, it would be irrational for the afflicted household items to be excluded from the quarantine. And perhaps the most telling example, the Talmud teaches that if the symptoms of tsaras appear on a newlywed or during a festival season, the Kohen does not examine the affliction or declare it to be tameh in order not to interfere with the celebration. Well, now again, you have somebody who's contagious. You don't say, "Oh, you're having a party. Well, let it go." No, separate them. But if the purpose of these laws is to prevent the spread of disease, it would be absolutely imperative to enforce the laws at times of great overcrowding and mingling. So clearly, as our sages teach, tsaras is not a bodily disease, but the physical manifestation of a spiritual malaise, a punishment designed to show the malefactor that he must mend his ways. The primary cause of tsaras is the sin of slander. As the sages say, the word mitzora is a contractor of motzi ra, one who spreads slander. Similarly, the sages teach that the affliction is a punishment for the sins of bloodshed, false oaths, sexual immorality, pride, robbery, and selfishness. The pattern that emerges is that it is a divine retribution for the offender's failure to fill the needs and share the hurt of others. God rebukes this antisocial behavior by isolating him from society so that he can experience the pain that is imposed on the others and heal himself through repentance. Okay, so that is what Saras is really all about. Saras is a spiritual malaise. It manifests in a physical manner. It will if you do teshuvah, it will disappear. Then you have to go through the cleansing process again, bring the sin offering, and so on and so forth. But the Kohen is the only one. I'm going through this very quickly because we're not going to cover it. The Kohen is the only one who can declare another person tameh, spiritually impure. If he does not know, say you have an ignorant Kohen, but you have a smart person who knows that there's saras, he has to teach the Kohen what it looks like and what the signs would be. And again, only the Kohen can declare that person to have saras, and only then will he be separate, and so on and so forth. So the major thing is, it's not one of contagion. It's not one of leprosy. This is a disease that is brought about by Lashon Hara and other things. And really, it was God's gift to us. Because how great would it be, the rabbis would argue, that if we were told, if we had signs of what we were doing was wrong, that way you could immediately repent. Unlike today, where we don't have this, and so when people speak Lashon Hara, either they don't realize it or they think it's fun or whatever the case is going to be, but there's no physical repercussions to that. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, so the word leprosy in English or whatever other language was a non-Jewish translation, because surely the Gemara must explain all this also.
Yeah, sure it does.
And so they say an affliction of the skin, so maybe the assumption, well, that's leprosy then.
Well,
that's what
again, the people who were translating to Christians did not have the oral tradition in mind.
They didn't understand what it...
They just saw that there was a white spot.
It's a skin affliction.
Right,
that's
skin
all
affliction. So they went to Hodgkin's disease, they went to this, and they had the leper communities, and science is strange that way. They see something and they decide this is what it is. Okay, we'll have to stop here.
Okay.